Hi friends, it's Pastor Ruth here again on YouTube on Wednesday to bring you a special message for the children of the Longmeadow Congregational Church UCC in Auburn. I'm sorry I wasn't here last week. Sometimes weeks just get a little bit busy and we can't get to everything we want to do, and I missed coming here last week, and I'm so happy to be back again this week to bring to you another fall craft and another wonderful story. In fact, one of my favorite stories from the Bible, and I'll tell you soon why it's one of my favorites. I am the pastor of the Longmeadow Congregational Church, United Church of Christ in Auburn, and I am here almost every Wednesday with a special message for the children. And I'm also here every Sunday with a service of worship for the entire church family. And I hope that you will join me. If you'd like to receive notifications of whenever I post, you'll find down below the video a subscribe button. You can just click that, and if you click the bell next to it, you will get a notification every time a new video is posted. And so today, as I've done throughout this entire month, I'm going to start with a special autumn craft. And I always look for crafts that you do not have to go out and buy special craft supplies to do. Hopefully, everything you have here will be something everything I use here will be something that you have in your house. And so I have been thinking about different autumn things. We did an autumn leaf wreath, and we made a pumpkin, and we've done a number of different things related to autumn. And as this is the last of the harvest season, I wanted to do something related to the harvest. And so this week I made this special bookmark that shows a sheaf of wheat. And you can see I did it with cardstock and some kind of thick twine, and I'm going to show you how you can make one of these too, hopefully using stuff that you have around your house. So let me start with the craft. Let me tell you first the supplies that you're going to need. First of all, you're going to need a printout of the bookmarks that you can find on the internet. I have put a link down below where you can go and print out this page that gives you six of the bookmarks that you can make, all printed out for you. You will also need a pair of scissors, some kind of twine or ribbon or yarn. You can use any that you have. I happen to use this thick twine because I thought that the roughness looked more like a wheat grains on it. However, I did find that this was a little bit thick, but I want to use the stuff that I have around my house. I will tell you that it goes much more smoothly if you use ribbon or if you use yarn. Now you will need a little over 2 feet of this, and so you may want to have a grown-up help you measure out and cut 2 feet of whatever string you're using. You will also need some Scotch tape and a hole punch. And you want to make sure that the hole is big enough that you can pass through whatever you are using as your wheat. And so first thing we do is we will cut out one of the bookmarks. Now you can just use this. I have bigger scissors because that's what I have, but you can do this with simple blunt nose scissors if that's what you have, because we're just cutting some cardstock. I printed this on cardstock rather than on paper so that it would stand up better to the work that I'm doing and would last longer. So I cut this out, and as you can see, I'll bring this a little bit closer, there are little dots on each point of the grain of wheat. And what you want to do is take your hole punch and punch out wherever you see one of those dots. And so this is a little bit can be a little bit tricky depending on the size of your hole punch. Mine is kind of big because I have big twine, and I want to make sure that the hole is big enough for it to go through. Now I'm going to just punch out a few of these right now so that we can get started. So I've punched out a few of them, and then I want to take my 2 feet of string, and the first thing I want to do, because this makes it easier to thread, is you can see that's kind of frayed and it'll all sort of fall apart. So I take a little piece of my tape. Now I use Scotch tape, but it doesn't really matter what kind of tape you have. This is just what I happen to have. And I take this and I put the tape around the edge so that it holds it together. And it doesn't take much tape. I'm going to just cut off. You only need like 1 inch of it, but that will hold the edge of it together. You can see like that. So then I take my string and I put it through the very bottom hole, and it's on the inside of the very bottom hole, on the inside of the first grain of wheat, and I pull it through until there's just a little bit on the back. Then I take another piece of thread and I tape that end down. So I leave a little bit of a tail, and I put my tape over it so it just holds it. Now you can glue this, but then you would have to wait, and so I'm just taping it for now, and I may glue it down later, and that just holds that down on the back. Then you take your string and you see I started at the bottom of this. I want to go to the top of this. So I'm the bottom, and I go to the top of that same grain of wheat, and then I pull it through. Now the thing is, you don't want to pull too hard because this is cardboard, so you just pull it until it reaches the end. Then you come, your thread is in the back, you come to the bottom of the next grain of wheat on the opposite side, and you push and thread it through. Now, as I said, my twine is really thick, so I have to be, I have to kind of make sure it goes all the way through. If you use ribbon or yarn, it will be easier. So again, I come in at the bottom of the grain of wheat, and I push it through at the top of the grain of wheat. And I pull it through. And you make sure it doesn't get twisted up, and you turn it around. And so it looks like that. And then once again, I go to the next bottom hole next to the stem on the opposite side. I push it through, pull it in. Came in at the top, at the bottom of the grain of wheat, and I go in at the top of the grain of wheat. And I'm going to continue doing this all the way through until I have completed the entire thing. So it's a fun kind of stringing thing. I like stringing. You could even do this with shoelaces, because shoelaces already have the end all together. So if you happen to have an extra shoelace floating around, and so you can just do that all the way up until it finishes. And then you just cut off any excess and you tape it down on the back, and you have a really beautiful, lovely bookmark or you can put it up on your refrigerator, or you can put it up on the wall as a decoration, as a reminder that autumn is the harvest season. And so I wanted to tell you a harvest story from the Bible. Now, you remember I told you that this is one of my favorite stories? Well, the reason it's one of my favorite stories in the Bible is because it's about a woman whose name is Ruth, just like my name. Now, my parents didn't name me after Ruth in the Bible. They named me after my grandmother. But I always liked the fact that my name was in the Bible. And so I learned the story of Ruth, which we don't read very often. It's a very short story in the Bible, and it is in the Hebrew Scriptures near the beginning of the book. So let me tell you the story of Ruth. And I'm going to continue while I'm doing this to punch my holes and to string my, to thread my bookmark. So there was a woman named Ruth, and she lived in a country called Moab. And there she met and married a man whose parents had come from a place called Bethlehem in Judah. Now, you've probably heard of Bethlehem before. Who else was born in Bethlehem? Do you remember? Jesus, that's right. Jesus was born in Bethlehem. Well, this was long before Jesus. And this man and woman named Elimelech and Naomi, they lived there. But there was a famine, and their crops didn't grow, and there wasn't enough to eat. So they decided to move, and they went to the country of Moab. And there, their two sons met women who lived there, one being Ruth, and they got married when they grew up. Now, unfortunately, Moab also ended up having a famine, and a lot of people died, including Naomi's husband and Ruth's husband. And so there they were, these two women alone in Moab, and there was a famine, and there wasn't that much to eat. And so Naomi had heard that things were better back in Bethlehem in Judah, and so she decided that she was going to go back there. Now, Naomi at this point was an older woman, and her daughter-in-law Ruth had come to love her, and she said, "You can't go back there alone. You'll never make the trip, and then how will you take care of yourself?" And she said, "Well, I'll just do the best I can." And Ruth said, No, we will do the best we can. I'm going with you." And so she decided that she was going to stay with Naomi and go with her, leave her home in Moab, and go to Bethlehem in Judah to help take care of Naomi. And so they traveled a long way, and they ended up back in Bethlehem in Judah. Now, at that time, women could not work. They could not do jobs outside the home. And unlike today, where women can do any job outside the home. Now, they were very hungry, and they didn't have money to buy grain to make bread. And so Naomi said, "I'm going to go into the fields, and after all the people have picked what they want of the grain, I will go and glean," that's the word, glean, "what is left over. And maybe I'll be able to get enough to make us a loaf of bread." And so she went to the fields of a man named Boaz, and he had people working for him. Boaz was a very rich man, and he owned a lot of fields, and he hired a lot of people to pick his grains. And so she watched them go, and as they left an area, she took her basket and she went along, and she picked up the stuff from the ground that they had dropped and left, because they were getting so much, hundreds, thousands of sheaves of wheat, that if one or two fell, it was no big deal to them. So she went along and picked up what was left over, and that's called gleaning. And so Boaz came to the fields, and he was watching over his workmen and seeing they were doing a great job, and he was just encouraging them. And he looked over and he saw this woman, leaned over, picking up 1, 2, 3, just individual little sheaves of wheat. And he asked one of his workmen, "Who is that woman over there?" And he said, "Oh, she's Ruth. She and her mother-in-law have just come here from Moab. Naomi is from here, and her daughter-in-law Ruth is from Moab, and they don't have very much. Both of their husbands have died, and Ruth is just here gleaning, and we figured it would be okay with you. We've collected most of it, and she's just taking over the scraps, etc." And he thought, that's amazing that this woman came all the way from her own home in Moab just to take care of her mother-in-law who was getting older. And he watched how hard she worked, and he really admired her for doing that. So he said to the head of his workers, he says, "What I want you to do is to make sure that there is enough grain left over for her every day. You can miss a few. It's okay. I don't mind. I think somebody who works this hard and cares for their family so much should have enough to eat." And so as the gleaners went, they sort of intentionally left some of the grain so she didn't have to work quite so hard, and she was able by the end of the day to gather enough grain to make bread for herself and Naomi. Now the story of Ruth continues, but I'm going to finish there for today. And I just thought this is one of my favorite stories, not only because it's about a woman named Ruth, like I am, but also because it showed about how a person like Boaz, who has so much, can do something to help people who don't have very much, like Ruth and Naomi. He had more than enough, and he was able to share easily what he had. Now, not all of us own a big field of wheat, but every one of us has something we can share. Now, probably each week or maybe once a month or somewhere in between, someone in your family goes to the grocery store and buys food for your family. And so what we're doing is we are inviting everybody in our church, when they go out to buy the groceries for their family, to maybe take a little bit of money and also buy a gift card for the grocery store. You ever see those gift cards? They're usually right by the cash register. And buy a gift card, and we're going to put them together and give them to families here in Auburn who might be having a little bit of trouble making ends meet and not have quite enough money to be able to feed their entire family. And we want to help them out. We can feed ourselves, and we can share also. So the next time your mom or your dad or your grandma or your grandpa or whoever it is that goes and does the grocery shopping for your family, can you ask them if they can also pick up a gift card for the grocery store and send it into the church so that we too can be like Boaz and help people who are working really hard but just came on some hard times and are not able to make ends meet. Now, it can be from any grocery store, from Shaw's or Hannaford's or Aldi or Market Basket, wherever you grocery shop. Maybe you can go with them if you like to go grocery shopping and if that works for them, and you can help them buy the gift card and then send it into the church so that we can have enough to help out all the people in our town who might need a little bit of extra help. And we too can give a little bit of what we have of our harvest from the grocery store to somebody else in need. Will you pray with me now? Lord, we thank you for giving us all that we have. We thank you for the food that we eat and the homes that we have and the people who love us. Help us to remember when we enjoy all that we have, that we can also share as well. Bless those people with whom we share, that they may have enough this winter. Amen. So thank you for joining me here again today, and I hope that you will join me next week when we will begin November, a brand new month, and we'll be talking about a special holiday that comes up in November. I bet you know what it is. So think about it, and I will see you here next Wednesday. Until then, I miss you, I love you, and I hope you have a great week. See you next week. Bye-bye.